Hello, and welcome to Chapter 3. And we're going to begin Part 1 of the Chapter 3 lesson, which is going to be Medical, Legal, and Ethical Issues, the Introduction and Scope of Practice. So, getting started, I just want to go ahead and point out there that the main reason we are here is to help people, not to harm them. So if you follow this basic principle of doing no further harm, that will keep you out of a lot of legal issues. Just always have in mind what's right for the patient. Not what's right for you or your partner, what's right for the patient. For instance, if there's a ball game on TV and a call comes out, you need to go, regardless of if it's fourth down in inches on the goal line. They're about to kick a field goal. The score is 20-21, and there's 3 seconds left in the game, and your team's about to try to win it. You need to go, you need to do what's right for the patient and what's right for the patient first. So you can avoid legal exposure if everything you do is in good faith, that you're not out there to be malicious or to do anything that is harmful. And you also want to do everything in accordance with your standard of care. And the way you can keep up with your standard of care is by participating in continuing education, by participating in run reviews with your medical director, by reading your protocols and staying up to date with your protocols, and even reading trade journals and reviewing your textbook from time to time. So a lot of times as EMS personnel, we're the first ones there, and when we get there, it is chaos. And sometimes we are undermanned. We don't have enough help to help all the patients that we need to, and we have to triage and stuff. So that makes us open to litigation because people are going to be armchair quarterbacking what we do after the fact. And as an advanced EMT, you have more responsibilities because now you're an advanced level provider. So that means that now the things that you can do can open you up to more litigation if you do things wrong. However, I'm going to tell you the risk is slim as long as you follow your standard of care and you act in good faith. So let's talk about the scope of practice here. Well, no, I've got one more slide here. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So even when emergency medical care is properly rendered, there are times when you may be sued. And the thing is, you can be sued for anything. It doesn't matter. You can be sued for just walking in the door. Somebody can file a suit against you. So don't walk around on ice, on eggshells, afraid to be sued. The best thing to do to keep you protected from being sued is, like I said earlier, follow the standard of care. Always do everything that is beneficial for the patient's benefit. Not your benefit, not your partner's benefit. And do what's right. Just the basic principles there. So there's several things that can happen to you besides criminal and civil. There's also administrative action that can be brought against you, like the State Office of EMS. They can bring administrative actions against you for violating state rules, and they can suspend your license, they can fine you, they can take your license from you, and so on. So make sure not only do you follow the scope of practice and that you do everything that is beneficial to the patient, but you also follow state rules and regulations. So that means you need to probably take time and review the state rules and regulations. And you can find those at, and I'm going to show you. Look at that iPad mini. Don't you want one? www.ems.ga.gov. And if you go to there, you'll see all kinds of stuff, all kinds of links. There's a link for the scope of practice, and I've showed you that before. There's a link for your provider updates. And over here, the procedure forms and applications, there's all kinds of rules and regulations here that you can look over to make sure that you're in compliance to help keep you up to date. The other thing is ethical issues may also come up on the job. And ethics are like gray areas. They can make you make difficult decisions sometimes. And we'll talk about that a little later. So let's let's get into, finally, scope of practice. Here we are. So scope of practice outlines the care that you're able to provide as an AEMT, and the scope of practice is generally defined by the state as a broad umbrella, okay? So the State Office of EMS, and I showed you where that was, where you can find the scope of practice at www.ems.ga.gov. And if you go right here to scope of practice, it will bring you here where it says practice. And look, there's scope of practice for licensed EMS personnel, AEMT. And that will bring us to your scope of practice of what you can do. And it would be good for you to review this entire document, because that's what you're going to be expected to follow here in the state of Georgia. So the scope of practice says what you're able to do, but however, you also have to have a medical director that authorizes you to do those things. So just because the scope of practice says you can do it doesn't mean you can do it. You have to have your medical director backing you up. And the way they back you up is through your protocols and through standing orders. So the medical director authorizes care, and you can receive medical direction in one of two ways, either online or offline. So online is whenever you call and you ask them permission to do something, and offline is through protocols. Now, just because the medical director, if you call and say, hey, as an advanced EMT, you call and you say, I've got a patient who's in severe pain and I want to administer them morphine. And if the medical director on the phone comes up and says, yes, go ahead and administer morphine, you still cannot do that. It is not within your scope of practice within the State Office of EMS. So you have to follow the scope of practice ultimately. So if you do give that medication, or you perform skills like, let's say you perform endotracheal intubation in the field as an advanced EMT and you're not authorized to do so, you could be charged with negligence, and there could also be criminal offenses filed against you because you're technically practicing medicine without a license there. So scope of practice is different than standard of care. The standard of care is the actual care that you're going to give, and the standard of care is defined by what a prudent person, peer, in your exact situation would do in that situation. So they look at your peers, and that's how the standard of care is defined. It is not by the scope of practice, but it should be, because your peers should be following the scope of practice. And you have a legal responsibility to provide proper, consistent care and report problems. So it's not just good enough to let something slide if you see a violation of the standard of care or scope of practice. You need to report it to your supervisor or someone, or your medical director, or whoever your policy and procedures at your organization state. Well, that's it for part 1. Part 2 will be standards of care and duty to act and abandonment.